Great.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that. This is going to be jam-packed with a bunch of information. But first, let's start off with some wants and needs. Anybody, you got to have some kind of want. Oh,
So I have a 3,468 square foot house on the cusp of McDonald Ranch for just under 1,000, 4 bedrooms with an office and a pool.
Hi, we have a listing for 1.28. We have a listing for 1.28, a single story in Las Quintas, and it is like on half an acre with 4 bedrooms. So call me if you guys have anybody in the market. It looks just like California. It's like all these trees, it's shade, it's really beautiful. Call me.
anybody else? So, let's face it, the market's turning, right? Inventory's increasing. We start to start working. Oh, do you have one too?
I've got 795 out in Northwest on Campbell Road, 4 bedroom, 3 bathroom, 2,679 feet. It's got a guest house in it, sits on a full acre. And,
All right, thank you, Adam. So, as I was saying, look, the market's changing. You guys have to, I'm going to say this nicely, I think, with no guarantees. We've had it real easy selling property over the last couple of years, right? Put it in the MLS and all of a sudden it's sold and you have a bunch of offers. We have to go back to doing what we normally did in selling homes, right? Not only just putting it on the market, but having the open houses, doing the literature, and calling the people that we need to call to find out if you have a buyer yourself for those properties. So get that mindset going now so you'll be ahead of the curve when the wall really hits. So be prepared, right? And those of you that have buyers, holy mackerel, guess what? You got stuff to sell. So let's not be so picky on some of the buyers that you're working with. I know some people will be cherry picking the heck out of buyers. Still make sure they're qualified, make sure they go to Prosperity Mortgage and get all this stuff done, but holy mackerel. Did I do it again? Lending, sorry.
They go to Prosperity Lending too.
Yeah, and mortgage, lending. So speaking of that, and so I can get off the microphone before I make too many mistakes, let's throw it over to Shelley with her mortgage stock. Yeah, right.
Happy Tuesday, everyone.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, everyone.
Happy Tuesday.
All right, so I didn't have any coffee this morning and tea. All right, so I wanted to share 2 different things. I know with the payments and everything and their interest rates where they are today, buyers are actually inquiring about how they can get a lower payment. Have you guys heard of ARMs? Not guns, but ARMs, the adjustable rate mortgages. What about buy downs? Are you guys starting to hear buy downs? I actually heard another builder, starts with an L, who's offering this as a buy down. When I worked with them back in the days, this was like their big thing. So an adjustable rate mortgage is something that is going to have typically a fixed rate period. So you'll see them as, use this. You'll see them usually as like this, a 5-1, right? Or maybe a 7-6. This first number here is the fixed period, right? So this would mean a 5-year or a 7-year fixed period for our client. The second number is the adjustment metric. So this meaning 1 year, this meaning 6 months. For some buyers, I don't normally put a first-time home buyer into this because it's very, very difficult for them to comprehend. A lot of people are just seeing the interest rate at a low amount, but for some first-time home buyers, it actually could be a huge benefit for them because from a strategy standpoint, they may not be living in that home for longer than 5 years. Does that make sense? So it wouldn't adjust until after the 61st month that adjustment would happen. So if you guys have any questions as far as the ARMs, they are coming in with a little bit lower of an interest rate. We still have to qualify them at a higher amount, but it helps them to step into a mortgage payment. Yes, sure. Visitor guy in purple.
There's still the cap on it, right? There's still the annual cap. It's not like
There is.
if rates are 9%, it's not going to go from 5 to 9.
Yeah, great point. So there's also this, but I don't want to confuse you. So there's usually like this, or this actually is more like a 5. What this ultimately means is that's your lifetime cap. So in this particular case, you take this plus this, that loan, that rate could never increase by more than 7% the life of the loan. Does that make sense? 5 plus the 2. In this particular case, it could never increase by 12%. Does that make sense to everybody?
Increase up to.
So, I'm sorry. What the going rate is, so let's say, because our rates are 5%, that's why. So today's rate today would be 5%. 2% increase would be 7%. The going rate when they first started, the first 7 years is 5%. The max that it would ever be would be 12%. There's actually been cases with, if the market shifts down, they also get the benefit of the lower rate. Okay? You guys are hearing buy down, so that's an adjustable rate mortgage. Any other questions on that? Thank you for pointing that out, Sherwin. Okay, buy down. So starting rate, let's say, is 5%. That's a pretty 5%. What do you think a 2-1 buy down means?
2%.
Exactly. So a 2-1 buy down, your buyer is going to start at 3%. For their first year, they're going to go to 4% for the second year, and then for the third year and beyond, they'll stay at 5%. You also have a 1-1 buy down. So they'll start out, say, if the rate is 5%, they'll start out at 4%. Really, the benefit for this is so your buyers can get acclimated to their payments, right, for this buy down scenario. Some of your builders will do this as an incentive. They'll usually have to prepay for that buy down portion.
Are there selling restrictions on the buy?
As far as?
Selling your house. They go in.
No. So regular loan, yeah.
Regular all.
Yeah, same thing with this too, right? This is principal and interest. This is not our crazy interest onlys that we used to sell back in 04 or 2000? Back in 2000. In 00. But, yes.
They qualify on the 3%, right?
No, they'll actually qualify on the start rate. Yeah, on your buy down.
Of the 3, not 5.
You'll qualify here.
Qualify out the 5.
Yeah, so it doesn't help from a qualifying standpoint, but it does help for them to settle into their payment.
Can you refinance that? Can you refinance like?
Absolutely. Yeah, this honestly is like an escrow account that's held back. So the difference in this payment 345 ultimately is the cost that they have to pay up front or pay through points or have the seller or the builder pay for them, which is why builders like this, because instead of lower interest rates or the case may be, they'll actually prepay this difference in payment for them.
What's that cost of?
Depending on how much they're going to put down, it could be, depending on how much. Ultimately, this is the difference in payment here, is how much they would have for 12 months. The difference in payment here is how much they have for 12 months, and they collect that. That's the cost. It's kind of prepayment for them, and usually through the interest rate. So if you hear 2-1 buy down, 1-1 buy down, you guys know what that is now, right? And then if you hear adjustable rate mortgages or ARMs, you know what those are. Okay. Any other questions for me? Yeah.
How is this different from what we did 12 years ago?
They qualified on the lower rate, didn't they?
They used to, yeah. And they used to be IOs, interest only. So this used to be a 5-1 interest only, which you qualified at the interest only payment back in the days. Now we qualify them at
You didn't qualify, you just had to have.
You just,
Yeah.
Hey, we still had to put some numbers on an application.
So, I go back in the day, that was good for, students or people that were starting out that might be like advancing maybe in the next, 2, 3, 5 years. So they still would qualify them on that higher.
They do,
requirements
yeah.
now.
They do, yeah, yes, they do. There's no out, and usually, to be honest with you, this starts at the ending rate is higher. Because you want to absorb some of the cost for this for the client, but this is just more for an example.
And that works for a first time home buyer too?
Anybody, yeah. You're going to see this right now. I actually saw an advertisement. I know you guys are like, Lennar Homes is the other builder the builder that I worked with back in the days, and we did this. They ultimately, when they seller funded, they would fund these all day long. So they're bringing them. Yeah. And then these are here. I mean, these have been here for your jumbos and your conventional financing, but you're actually seeing them now come out for your FHA or VA buyers as well. This is really a strategy play for your clients. Totally different when you're just not selling their rate, right? You have to talk about what the benefit is for them being in a fixed period of time. Does that make sense? Cool. Any other questions for me?
I had a question.
Yes.
Do you know if any of them are thinking about amortizing it over 40 years at all versus 30?
Yeah, smart guy. I think, we have to figure out the affordability issue, and I think hearing that the modifications are coming out in 40-year terms, I feel servicing can now handle a 40-year term, that is going to be down the horizon, or in the horizon for us, is that what you say, down the road for us? Because we have to figure out a way to curb that. I personally don't think we're gonna see like 2% rates in the near future, so I think that's a way to change that. We did a payment scenario, if you guys watch Real Estate Exposed, Brandon and I talked about it for our show on Friday. The difference in payment was $200, right? Same rate, just changing of that term. So that's what, $40,000, $50,000 difference in sales price for a client to qualify? So that would, so go tell your, well, you guys are gonna talk about that, right? Your legislative information?
You never know.
Okay. All right, any other questions for me? Tom's breathing down my neck like, hurry up, Shelley, go. Okay, have an amazing week.
Okay, Shelley. Okay, so last week, everybody sitting up here, plus Brandon, plus Tyson Roberts, plus Patty Kelly, plus Chris Bishop, we were all in, used to say DC, but the hotel we're used to having our big mid-year conference in is closed, so we were in the Gaylord in Bay Harbor, not Virginia, Maryland. And the whole purpose of this trip really is to go meet with our people in the Congress and tell them these are our issues, and we raise money, and we have lots of money to give to campaign contributions, and it's not for Democrats, it's not for Republicans, it's for the Realtor party. And on this trip, it was a little different because Congress was not in session, so we did not get to meet with our congressional representatives, but we did get to go to the Cannon office building, which is where they have their offices, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But our two senators were in town, and so we had a delegation that met with them in person. And I say this because the money that we raise through our RPAC contribution supports not only, we give part of it back to NAR, and it supports our local candidates, our state candidates, and some of the, our national candidates. So if you contributed so far this year in 1922 to RPAC, PSF, even if it was just your $50 when you paid your dues, if you show up at the association today and tomorrow between 9 and 1, you get a free gift. So from here, it's worth the drive to the association. So that being said, most of us have been going to Washington, D.C., our mid-year legislative meetings for many, many years, but Ellie Morris went as a member of the local board of directors, and Michael Shiro went as the chair of the global business community. And so, since we were been there before, we're kind of jaded. You guys tell us your experience and your thoughts and your takeaways from being there for the first time. You want to go first?
You go. I was, quite blown away by everything. Going up to the Hill, I'd never been to the Hill before, and meeting with our congressman's aide, which is all we can meet with.
Which do most of the work.
Yeah, right.
When you're talking to the aide, some people were a little upset they didn't get to talk to their congressperson. Well, the congressperson has only so much that they can actually retain, and they have some great staffers that have been around for a long time that know everything. And if you get to a staffer and you're able to say your spiel, it'll make it to the congresswoman or congressman wherever they're at, because that's their job, is to remind them of what they forgot, and they forget a lot.
It's also a shorter version, because when we go over there, we talk for half an hour, the aides collect it down to one paragraph,
Yeah, sorry.
and then they take it straight to the committee that it needs to go to. Because sometimes you're talking to an aide, and their congressman's not even in a committee that can do anything for you, so. If people miss, go ahead.
Sorry, now they're bursting your bubble.
No bubbles bursting. The bubble's still there. And we talked about, the housing shortage is our biggest issue. And explained some of the things we felt needed to be done. It was very good. We had plenty of time. I didn't feel like we were rushed at all. So we got all the time we needed to get our point across. And I thought that was a big, huge impression for me. Shall I go on or go back and forth?
I'll go back and forth. Well, you know, there was more than just that afternoon.
Well, yeah, a lot more. Look, for me, you all know me, this was a lot about networking. When we went to meetings, I never sat with anybody from Nevada. I know people from Nevada, so I want to meet people from outside of Nevada. And I met a lot of great people, exchanged a lot of new information. Hopefully, you know, it'll pay off down the road. If nothing else, I made a new friend in our industry, and to me, that is worth a lot. So that was a big part. And, you know, seeing Brandon going to the Hall of Fame was fantastic. Architect Hall of Fame, Tom, yeah. It was really a proud moment for all of us. And we had a great contingency there, and we were really, I think we always stand out as, well, I say, we stood out that day, say, oh, it's my first time. But we sure shined as a group, Nevada group. There was a lot of information, a ton of information. And
How about some of the meetings? You go to any of the meetings?
I went to a lot of the meetings, some of them were a little over my head, I'll be frank. When it came to legislation parts, I didn't quite fully understand everything, but yeah, there were a lot of meetings we went to, learned a lot, got a lot of good tips on how to market, which was nothing to do with legislation, but again, something that I was very interested in. And I can't wait to go back. I'm real excited about it. And I will tell you, I had never even considered going before. But this time I was kind of forced to go, and I don't see why I would ever miss it again.
And with Ellie saying that, let me tell you, we have 2 meetings a year. Now, this one in DC was the first one since May of 2019, so it was really kind of exciting. There were still some people wearing masks. They weren't mandatory, but that was their choice. That's fine. We had over 8,000 realtors show up for this. Now, this one is more about legislative and going to the Capitol, but there's one in November. Now, the one in November, the convention changes every year. So this November is going to be in Orlando. And I will tell you, it's not inexpensive. You have to pay for your plane fare, you have to pay for your room, you have to pay for your meals, you have to pay for your registration at the convention, but any realtor can go, and it's an investment in your career if you can afford it. So this one is more educational, it's more marketing and how to deal with buyers and how to deal with sellers. It's not total legislative. But then next year, it's going to be in Las Vegas. So the only thing you'll have to pay for is your registration.
So we'll pay for your airfare too.
Yeah, we'll pay for your airfare.
Believe it.
So, and Michael, the reason I bring that up, because Michael did ask me, he said, I didn't know anybody can come to these things. If you are a realtor, you are invited. Some people you're told to go, but for other realtors, you are more than welcome. So Michael, what was your impression?
I was really surprised. I was very impressed. I was surprised that the type of people that you actually had access to, people from the very top level of NAR, people from the top level of our state that I got to know. And then, of course, it all comes down to the local association. That's where policy starts, is through us. We're the boots on the ground that really get to see what's going on with people. And so it was really kind of cool that that's what this is about, that we kind of go and tell what's going on in our area, and then that affects policy. Right now, they're seeing a big disparity in home ownership, and are seeing a widening gap. Some of the interesting facts, I had to take notes because I was required to, because I had a couple of things that in order for them to send me, I had to report on. But they were talking about home ownership and how the gap is widening right now, that with among whites, home ownership is about 73%. In the Black community, it's about 43%. In Hispanic community, it's risen a lot, it's 51%. And in the Asian community, it's 62%. But they have been seeing these margins and disparities kind of grow, particularly recently, because of the housing shortage. We definitely have, I believe they were saying it was something like 17 million units shortage for housing. So that's doing a lot of things. It's driving, because of scarcity, it's driving prices up because we have a high demand and very low inventory. And what I really hope to drive home is that our country has been so divided in the past few years because of a number of things. But when it comes to home ownership, real estate, all of that, we need to put the politics aside because we are all one group of people. We need to just quit turning on each other, pointing the fingers at each other, and find solutions, because I don't care where you sit on the political spectrum, families and people basically want the same things. We're being divided, these parties, and the party's not for us, it's for them and their friends. So we need to get in there and speak up for homeowners. Yes?
Were there any good solutions? Did they talk about solutions?
Well, basically, the solutions were they wanted feedback from us and to try and figure out. One of the big things, and we're all aware of it, is that because of the shortage, hedge funds, big companies are going in and kind of hurting. Some people look at it differently. They think that they're helping, but I honestly, because I have two daughters at home buying age now in their 20s, and in-laws that are elderly, people like that are getting beat out. They just can't compete. So we're trying to find a way to level the playing field and have property rights protected. But do we want to protect corporate rights over individual or personal? That's kind of the thing that we're at right now. I definitely believe in property rights, but I think that we need to level the playing field for everybody, for our kids, our family. I think that's where it comes first. As realtors, home ownership, not, investments are cool, but home ownership I think needs to be first and primary focus right now.
So every meeting I went to almost, the people use these three words. So I'm going to say this was kind of the theme: diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the first meeting we had to go to, and I will tell you that I had to get up at 3 o'clock after going to WCR's top 25 women to make a 6 o'clock flight to DC. And the next meeting was at 8 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, so it was federal legislative and political reform. And the two speakers were J. Ron Smith. I never really did figure out what he did exactly, but he's extremely well-spoken. And Keisha Lance Bottoms, who's the former mayor of Atlanta. I've always kind of liked her. She's very articulate, very intelligent, and she was saying, her one line that stuck with me was, everyone needs a place to call home. But, and he's already talked about the gap, but there are two big issues that we need to look at. And one big issue is appraisals for minority-owned homes. Now, she had a second home that was kind of like a vacation home that was in a rather exclusive gated neighborhood, and they decided to sell it. And she, besides being the former mayor of Atlanta, she's also an attorney, so I would just imagine her spouse is also equally educated and making money. But they have a collection of black art in their home. And when the appraisal came in, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars lower than anything else that ever sold in that neighborhood.
Really?
And this is happening very, very frequently. So we need to work on the appraisal issue. That was number one. The other thing we need to look at is how we look at credit scoring. Because now, I didn't know this, but I wrote this down. If you're a renter and you're being evaluated, they're not taking into account how much money you've paid for rent and how often you make the payments. That needs to change. So there are two things they're looking at is appraisers and their training and credit scoring. And then some of the other things I talked about, there's a big push on taking vacant or abandoned or no longer used shopping centers and office buildings and turning them into affordable housing. And I just think about, thought across my mind, if you've been around a long time, on the corner of Rainbow and Spring Mountain, that old Lowe's Kmart shopping center.
What a waste.
Put all kinds of apartments in that place, even though it's one story. But she was extremely impressive, and so was he. Anybody else have anything else to say from the first general?
No, but that was good, that was a great meeting, and the appraisal issue, really, I was unaware of that. Disparaging, disparity with the appraisals. And that's one of the things we talked to our aide about, was the shopping centers, and what we can do with those. And that was,
I had one thing on that I took away from that and was interesting too, is affordable housing kind of has a negative connotation. Everyone wants affordable housing, but not in my backyard, right? Not around my, and the mayor actually said, you should change the term to workforce housing. It's really the workforce that you're looking to be able to get into. And then I was in another meeting and they said, what happened to starter homes? I mean, we just need more starter homes, because that didn't have a negative connotation either. So I think a lot of it is words have meaning, and just being in this kind of environment, changing that a little bit. The conversation should be about, first-time home buyers, homes that they can start out in, and the workforce that is here and that supports the city, being able to afford to live somewhere. So I took that from that, which was interesting.
That's very good. Thank you, Brandon. So the next meeting I went to, and I was the only one from our group there, was the Mls Forum. And there have been some changes, speaking of appraisals, in the appraisal industry. So here's what they're doing now. You can only include the primary structure in the square footage. And we do that in our MLS. So if you have a house with a detached casita, the casita is not included in the square footage. We have it listed as additional square footage. So that's what they're going to change nationally. But here was the interesting thing. This doesn't really apply to Las Vegas, but there are a lot of homes in the country that have full finished basements and full walkout basements. Well, guess what? If part of the structure is below grade, it's not going to be counted in the square footage. So, and it's very interesting, because I will tell you, my son has it in his mind that he wants to buy my mother's house that my sister lives in. But anyway, it has a 1 story in the front, 2 stories in the back, full walkout finished basement. But when you look it up on Zillow, it's only 1,600 square feet, and actually it's closer to 3,000. So they have not been including that below grade. The only other thing that came out of the forum is that MLS at the national level has their eyes on teams. There are too many problems with teams, and the big issue is the lack of consistency in how production is counted. So if Sherry and I were co-listing a property, if I get 50% credit or half a listing and she gets 50% credit and half a listing, it screws up all the statistics. They don't want that. But on the other hand, if Sherry's putting everything in her name and I'm not getting any credit, that also screws up the statistics. So nationally, they are looking at that. And then the other thing, now I fought this long and hard because I am on the MLS committee, and I almost cried when they took away area numbers, because ask me an area town and I can tell you the area number where it is. But they've done this nationally. It's gone away, area numbers in area maps, because it's considered redlining. Now I knew they were saying, well, it violates fair housing, but nationally they're calling it redlining. So, the next,
Zip codes don't.
Yeah, zip codes.
Because the zip codes are done by the federal government. And
They don't red light.
Okay, so then there were other little ins and out things on Monday. Do you guys have anything else on Monday you want to talk about? Okay, on Tuesday.
You got it broken down day by day?
Yeah, well, I took notes day by day. On Tuesday morning, another, yeah.
So, going back to like the additional square footage for, the house or like the basement and stuff. So then if they do the appraisal or the pricing on that, then doesn't that skew your price per square foot? Because like, your sister's house is 1,600 square feet, but it's actually 3,000, but they're basing it on 1,600, so now all of a sudden you have you know, $600 per square
Yeah, that's why
foot.
my son thinks he can buy it for $289,000.
They also don't really appraise homes price per square foot. I mean, they do it
Right,
at costs and
yeah,
stuff.
that's
That's something we use internally, but I'm gonna tell you, that differs from market to market, because in Salt Lake, I mean, they use the basement, and it
Right.
is in the appraisals. Or it was when I was there, so I think that differs in markets, but when you're looking at a national site, like some of these consumer portals, they may not be taking that into account, like she said.
I gotcha.
But you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna comment on the area. You know, there's still a section on the MLS thing where you can put in the area, but I wonder if anybody else has had the experience when you go in there, put the area in, it just doesn't seem to.
It doesn't what?
Because it's been removed.
It's been
phased out.
We don't have areas anymore.
They just left the field.
It's a
Oh, they just left the
non-searchable field.
field, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not a mandatory field anymore, so if you're searching through that field,
You're missing
you're not
out.
getting all the properties.
Gotcha,
It's-
okay, because I thought I was tripping.
We
It
need
should
it,
be.
we need it. During my year, we made it unusable, so it would go away, because everybody's complaining about it. We didn't take it away, we just made it unusable, because you take it, not mandatory, some put it in, some don't, all of a sudden, it's no longer an effective way to search for property.
So Tuesday morning, the whole thing was on advocacy. We talked about, we saw the Realtor Relief video, we saw the That's Who We Are videos. There's also That's Who We Are .com. But they've had such success with this advertising of That's Who We Are and their new videos that have come out. They've won a number of awards. So they want to continue this campaign, so next year when you pay your dues will go up $10 to pay for this for 5 years. Now, they say 5 years, but once it's in there, it never goes away.
So she's right and wrong in that regard. We had a $35 that was already assessed in our dues. It was set to sunset this year. The National Board of Directors voted to increase that by $10 to $45 and another 5 years. So it was set to sunset, but yes, they put it in to vote it and go big. And what they did is they pitched it as just a $10 increase to the thing, but it's actually $45 going forward, so,
Well, it'll be $10 more than they're paying now.
yeah, but still, it's
That's the bottom.
semantics.
So,
It made
okay.
me angry.
Yeah, so, the big issues they talked again were, bias in the appraisal industry, and that the finance system is discriminatory and it doesn't include rent payments. So the keynote speakers we had were from, they do podcasts called Punchbowl News, Anna Palmer and Jake Sherman. I'd not heard of them. They were actually very entertaining. And they said Roe versus Wade has now become the biggest issue it's been in 50 years now. Biden has spent over $20 million on COVID relief. Trump has $150 million in his campaign account. And then the question was asked, if not Trump as the Republican nominee for the next national election, then who? And so the three names they threw out were DeSantis, Tim Cotton, Rick Scott, and not Mike Pence. Okay, moving along. You guys have anything else to add from that one?
I do. One of the things they talked about, as Janet mentioned, was the Realtor Relief Program. And that's really been a big push, and just proud to be a realtor that in different areas where they've had hurricanes or tornadoes, they tend to be the driving force, getting together, helping people secure their grants, their loans to repair their properties. Another thing, and it personally concerns me and my family, is elderly people on fixed incomes living in places where the property taxes are just becoming unbearable. My fiance's parents live in New Jersey, and in New Jersey, property taxes are just unaffordable. I don't care if your house is paid off. If you're living on Social Security, you can't afford even with your monthly payment to pay the taxes. So these are things that they're trying to look at and find some solutions to help, our seniors, just our people that need the help. So I was very impressed and truly knew nothing about the national scope in which we participate. I guess until you get to these higher levels, I mean, we're the very lowest level here. We are here in Las Vegas, our association, and you have the state and the national. There's a lot of stuff going on that I was unaware of, so I was very impressed and intrigued and plan on attending every chance I get.
I'm just going to say, I'm always impressed with the promotions we do, the advertising, the marketing that NAR does for us. And I think it's worth the extra few bucks a year. It's really minimal what we pay for what we get.
So an NAR also has a push on for every realtor to donate $35 to the Realtor Relief Fund. And they had a number of videos of realtors in action during hurricanes and fires and everything else. So one of my highlights personally was Dr. Lawrence Young, the NAR economist. He talks about the economy and he throws out stats and figures, but he makes it so understandable. It's really interesting. So these are just some highlights of the notes that I took from him. The NAR membership has risen drastically in the past 3 years. We're up to 1.5. Expect home sales to come down this year. Pending contracts are falling. Expect a lot more homes on the market by autumn. The other thing he said is external economic factors are having a very negative impact on the market. In other words, the Russian-Ukraine war and the rising fuel prices and rapid increase of mortgage rates. And he's expecting the mortgage rates to accelerate even more quickly with all that's going on externally. NAR calculates purchasing a home is now 55% more expensive than just 1 year ago. So all your buyers is on the way, well, they missed the boat, it has sailed.
That's based on the equity gain, so the cost of the house now, and the raise in the interest rate. And so that 55% is, your payment is 55% more per month on average because of those two factors. So inflation is really hit the housing market too, and that's never reported. But that was a very intriguing statistic. That 1 year waiting, because we all have buyers out there that says, we're gonna wait. It now costs them 55% more than their monthly payment.
So the other thing he said, everybody's talking about how wages have gone up. Well, they have. Wages have risen 6%, but our rate of inflation is at 8.5%. So
Not quite there.
yeah, it's gone. And he expects higher mortgage rates to further slow the housing market. Now, those are all the notes I took that I could read. Does anybody else remember anything else comment on?
Did he go over when inflation actually was below actual wage growth the last 10 years? Like everybody talks about wage growth went up and then it stopped being inflation. But if you look at the numbers the last 10 years, that hasn't been the case in over 10 years. Wage growth has not kept up with inflation for 10 years. So all of a sudden people are talking inflation, inflation, inflation. It's been the same for 10 years straight. So I don't understand why when you guys are talking to your clients and they talk inflation numbers, just let them know. It hasn't been keeping up. The problem is, the thing is, nobody's actually looked at it over the last decade. Every year, Lawrence talks about inflation and wage growth, how it hasn't kept up. So I don't understand how it's all of a sudden an issue.
The biggest difference now is you are seeing some wage growth, but you're seeing inflation go even further apart. So that gap's even extending, even as people are starting to pay more. But you're right. I mean, it hasn't been equal all the way for a long, long time.
So let's face it, if you pay somebody more money per hour to make the burger, you gotta charge more for the burger, right? So it's just the way it's gonna go. We're set, and no matter what happens, our pay will never catch up with inflation because the pay is part of the inflation factor. You pay us more, you gotta charge more for the product. Charge more for the product, it's called inflation. So, how do you fix that, right? And let me bring something back to.
You raise rates.
Right, slow everything down.
For the product.
So let's bring this back a little bit locally, because there's some things that we're sort of skimming over with just Nevada, so you have the Nevada picture. 87% of the land in Nevada is owned by the federal government, right? We are forced by the government to pay more for land because there isn't a lot of it. Now, you can't just dump all the land back to the people, because then all of a sudden housing values will fall because land will be so cheap. So the political tightrope that everybody's walking is how much land, how fast, and for how much, right? So there's a lot of strings being pulled and people talking in back rooms and trying to figure that out. You're going to hear a lot about affordable housing. That's great, but let's face it, if the land costs so much, you can only be this low a price for a home. So until you fix the land and fix the regulatory stuff that goes with building those homes, so it doesn't cost so much, then that will help. But who wants to be that person that's in the political seat, getting dollars donated from big money donors in corporate America to fight for that little guy? So just be wary of that. It's going to be a big talking point, but just know until they release the land. I mean, I think the first verse of our, what's it called, the preamble for the ethics is under all is the land,
Yes.
right? That's so true, right? Because without the land, you can't build the houses, and we don't have the land, right? Yeah.
So the back room talking, deal making that we hear about, is there anything being discussed to your knowledge about an efficient way to start opening up some of that BLM?
Do I look like a guy that gets invited to the back?
Who knows? Yeah, you smoke a cigar every now and then, right?
Yeah, it was brought up to Cortez Masto. One of the things that happens is that since the government owns the land, there's a lands bill that gets passed that allocates so much land back to public use, right? So it's the lands, if you hear anything, you'll hear things about a lands bill that comes, and I'm sure Catherine will be all over it because she's trying to get reelected, right? So that's part of the stuff that you'll hear. And like it or not, without having elections, most stuff would not move, right? But you gotta move it so that people can feel like they can vote for you again. Just like our mask or the emergency mandate for COVID will be done on May 20th, by the way, is the date that COVID will no longer exist for the emergency measures. Now, funny enough, there have been hundreds of people out of the 8,000 that were there at the convention that came back with COVID, right? Now, it's a milder case, right? But it was it's there. I mean, COVID is something that we just have to get used to having. It's no longer the real death sentence that it was in the beginning, because it's mutated so much that it's not as harmful to those that are healthy. Anything's harmful, right? The flu is harmful to those that are unhealthy and elderly. So just be mindful of all that. Know that, politics is an amazing thing. And just understand why things are happening during the timing that they happen, all right?
I want to explain a comment about the housing, the land. Because one of the things we talked to our congressperson's aide about was if they're going to release more land or sell more, land, it was with the stipulation, if they release it or sell it at a discount, that they stipulate that that discount is passed on to the consumer. If the builder doesn't just go out and make a bunch of money out of it, if they get a deal, they pass that on to the consumer.
Okay, I want to correct something I said. I said that NAR was going to be asking all realtors to donate $35 to the Realtor Relief Fund. No, it's $3.
$3? $3.
I'd like to just back up just a second, something Brandon touched on, that whenever we have new industries or buildings come in, we need workforce housing. You know, no one likes the term low-income housing, no one wants to be, you know, have that stigma or whatever, but workforce housing. And then we also need to think rezoning to accommodate that. Typically, to have a more affordable housing, you have it in a more condensed space. You don't have to do all the plumbing, all of the electrics, all of that. It is a lot more sustainable when you have a higher density. And we do have issues, I guess, with that. Out west here, we're used to having our pretty big yards, and having to drive and commute. They're looking at sustainable cities, sustainable living and work environments, and it's kind of exciting to see some of the things that are on the drawing board, which are actually very nice, where basically they can almost do away with the lifestyle we know out west, having to have a car to go to anywhere. I'm kind of excited about that. I'm at that stage where, do I still want to pay for a car payment, insurance, all of this? Would it be cheaper to Uber or whatever? But designing new cities, new sustainable neighborhoods. Thank you.
You won't even have to leave your neighborhood. You're seeing a lot of stuff being rezoned too, for like industrial, residential.
Mixed use.
Yeah, whereas industrial wasn't usually included in those things, but they're starting to mix all that up so that you don't have to, your stuff you're getting delivered from the Amazon warehouse is really just in your area. So it's kind of crazy.
So it's very exciting, very eye-opening to see some of these things that people already are starting to get a handle on and trying to just figure this out.
So I want to talk to, I'm on the Professional Standards Committee for NAR, and they may pass some new resolutions and changes in the articles. And one of them, now this change happened last year, for you to file a complaint against a realtor for bad-mouthing you or saying mean things or untrue things about you, you needed to have been in a transaction with that person. Well, that changed last year, and it was changed to, you cannot badmouth any realtor. You can't make ugly comments about their business practices, or what they've done or what they have not done. If you do, it's a violation of the Code of Ethics. Well, it seems there was this home inspector who, not sure what he did, but the realtor decided she did not like him. And she posted nasty, ugly, untrue things about him all over social media and basically ruined his business. So now that has been amended to, realtors shall not knowingly or recklessly make false or misleading statements about other real estate professionals. That includes appraisers, home inspectors, lenders, whoever is title officers, whoever is in the deal, about their business or their business practices. And that passed.
So no more bashing a bad appraisal on social media. Thank you.
Appraisal or appraiser?
Anyway, right? No bashing solar companies, no bashing title companies for being late and never getting their stuff, or lenders. Just, play nice. That's basically it. Our whole professional standards stuff is basically trying to tell everybody to play nice in the sandbox and let's move forward to help people own homes and not use it as a vindictive metaphor for anything else.
Your hands are tied behind your back. The appraiser can still talk bad about you.
Yeah, because they don't have to follow the rules, so.
Okay, so another change was, a grievance committee does not normally allow anonymous complaints. And for an association this size, our grievance committee should have a lot more cases than they do. But you have these agents like, no, I'm not going to file a grievance complaint against them because I'm going to do a business with them somewhere down the road. We're going to be in a deal together. I know them personally, and even though they are egregious, I'm not going to do it. Well, that has now been changed. because you must have a complainant, somebody to complain, to file a complaint against somebody. So now they've said that a member of the grievance committee can take it upon themselves if they are presented the issue to file the complaint, so the person really complaining can remain anonymous if need be. Which are really, you know, most of the times it is anonymous through the grievance process, but once it gets to professional standards, everybody knows, even though it's supposed to be confidential. So another change that was made, and I don't dabble in property management, so I don't know if this happens, but evidently, if you'll remember last year, I reported on the fact that an agent has the right to ask a listing agent, show me proof, I want proof signed by your seller that you presented my offer. And the listing agent can turn around and ask the buyer's agent in writing, I want proof that you showed our counter to your buyer. That's now part of the code of ethics. Well, that has been changed. Just a tad, if a agent for a tenant does a counter, or an agent for a seller does a counter, they can ask for proof that it has been submitted. And I guess I'm ignorant, I didn't think in Las Vegas we were seeing counters, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna pay you $2,500 rent, but we'll pay you $2,100. I don't think that happens, does it?
Maybe it has been more of the application instead of getting a response.
Knowing that their application did go in, that they paid $100 for.
Yeah.
And then the only other change to it is they have what's called an expedited process for grievance. So if you've been accused of something, you can say, yeah, I did that. Okay, you know, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, whatever. Well, if what you did was really egregious, again, someone from the grievance committee can take the complaint all the way through to professional standards. So they're trying to encourage and promote professionalism and police your own.
Keep going.
That was really,
Is that the end of Tuesday?
that was the end of Wednesday.
Oh, thank goodness.
So, and Thursday we had the caucuses, the state and regional caucuses. I didn't take a lot of notes from those, but the main thing that came out of the Nevada caucus, HUD is going to be spending $32 billion for Section 8 housing. Nationwide, it's not just in Nevada.
$32 billion. Does that mean housing specifically for Section 8 residents?
You know, I don't know.
I think it has to do with hopefully streamlining the process. That was a big issue in the property management thing was Section 8 and stuff, and how difficult it can be to go through that thing. But also for payments and stuff like that, to help get vouchers, you have to get people.
Not just for constructing.
Yeah. But there is big pushes nationally about not being able to discriminate on source of funds. So you could not deny someone solely based on the fact that they're Section 8.
But it's
Okay,
having
Tom, you have a wrap up?
It's having the same effect anyway because they don't have if they say they're Section 8 and then they use the same guidelines for them to qualify for the house, they can't qualify anymore.
They're actually talking about how that stuff too.
They're trying to change Section 8 so it's more adaptable to not having to have the homeowners go through all those rigmaroles. Right? I mean, that's probably the biggest issue is the HUD mandated steps that a homeowner has to go through to be qualified to take Section 8. Right? Take that away, and I'm a homeowner and I'm going to get paid, and I know I'm going to get paid because there's a lot of money in it. Why wouldn't they take it? Right? That's the thing. Why wouldn't they take it? And if they take away the stuff with not being able to get rid of bad tenants, not being able to fix or having to fix, not having the security deposit to fix the home because of bad tenants, you take that away, because those were the real issues with Section 8,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't that it was, the money was coming from HUD, the money was, the fact of the money, the strings attached to them, you know, to get the money was the issue.
And the process.
Right. Take away that process and those hurdles, there should be no problem with anybody taking Section 8, right? Because that was the real issue, because that's what they were complaining about.
But you have to be real careful too. I mean, there's organized groups that are really pushing legislation in a lot of states, Missouri in particular. They're well organized and they're pushing things that are really anti-landlord, I mean severely, so they're overly protecting that. For instance, if I had a tenant and they didn't pay their rent and I was going to go through the eviction process, the city or them would pay for the attorney to defend them against me. You see what I mean? So there's things like that that are overreaching. I get it when somebody can't afford to defend themselves, but there's also people that will take advantage of that. So we have to be very careful on tenant landlord laws and rights, and that's a big thing with our legislation coming up. Because you do one good thing for one, and it has unintended consequences on the other side too. And if we lose the investors and stuff like that, think about how the rental prices will be here then, when you don't have any rental inventory.
That was something that I learned about while I was in DC. I didn't know a little bit, but man, this rent control is a bigger issue than I ever dreamt it was. And there are some states like Oregon and others that are just, we can't go like, we can't, like I have it here.
So then, we just have a few minutes left. I want to do some announcements, and then we'll touch on takeaways from our visits with whomever we went to see on the Hill. There was a lunch and learn scheduled for today on new marketing techniques by the marketing guru from the title company, and it has been canceled because nobody RSVP'd.
I just saw it yesterday.
It was set up for a long time. There is another lunch and learn on Thursday at 12:30. It's going to be on how to read and understand a preliminary title report. And if you're fairly new or if you're experienced and you don't know how to explain a preliminary title report to your clients, you need to be here. Please RSVP, because maybe you were thinking about coming, but you didn't RSVP with Haley, then we're canceling it. We can't ask people to give up an hour of their time and buy us lunch and they don't show up. So I will go real quickly. The group that I was in, we went to visit Congresswoman Susie Lee. She was not there. She has a fabulous aide named Bo, who we presented our issues. We gave him talking papers. He took notes on the talking papers and assured us we would go. But now I have to say this, I was shocked. Now I know everything in DC is based on seniority, and I know that Susie Lee is in her first term as a congressperson, and so therefore she is on the 3rd floor of the building. And when I walked into her office, I was like, whoa. So here's this itty bitty office. Now, Mark Amadei, who is a longtime congressman from Northern Nevada, he's got a big office on the 1st floor. It's all based on seniority. And so she has, you walk in the door and there are 2 aides sitting side by side, 2 staffers, and they're sitting at this table that's like about this, and they each have a huge computer in front of them. The sides of the computers are touching, and they're sitting there with masks on. And I'm like, oh boy, I wouldn't like to do this. Then we go into Susie Lee's, her office, where I was not impressed either, but again, it's seniority, but as these 2 people, male and female, sitting there on their computer with their masks on, side by side, and on the way out, I just said, bye, thank you for allowing us to come. I said, do you guys shop together online? Oh, well, they didn't think that was fun. But we did go present our case to Representative Susie Lee.
Since I represent the global business, I had to go to a couple of global things that I really enjoyed, learned some things. I didn't know that there were over 1,200 associations, realtor associations here in the United States. Only 10% of them have a global business committee. They're usually heavily weighted on the East Coast, the West Coast, and the southern border. I guess it's because we have more, international people coming into those areas. But when I was in Dubai a little over a month ago, I met this guy that everyone was calling Super Mario. I guess he's the representative, international representative from Peru with NAR. And most of the other countries do not have their own Realtors Association. They have affiliate members. They're trying to get their own MLS. But one of the things that Super Mario pointed out, and I've kind of been aware of it already, is that pretty much most of South America and Central America is a buyer's market, unlike our market here, which tends to be a seller market in most of them. So there's a lot of opportunities. I would suggest learn about it. I'll invite you all out to our Global Business Committee a week from tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
I have nothing else really, other than it was impressive as could be, and as far as going to the Hill, it was fantastic, but to see 8,000 realtors get together with a common cause is pretty powerful. So hopefully you can all attend next time, and I know I will miss it again.
And finally, to wrap it up, I didn't go to the Hill because I chose to stay back to allow some of the other agents that were up there to go up there. So next year will be different. We usually have a big room where we have 100 and some odd people in the room, and they all came to us one at a time to talk. So if you get to go or want to go, please go next year. It'll be at the Marriott Marquis in DC, which is between downtown and the Hill. Again, Orlando in November, and then in Las Vegas, November, I forget the exact dates, but it'll be at the Venetian, and it will be a lot of fun. And since it's here, please take advantage of being able to go and have a great time. You'll learn a heck of a lot. All right? Well, thank you all.